Hello, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyanini. National security tortures Caleb Kuda for filming abandoned Maslow cars. Caleb, Zoe, their treatment, and the raid of CTFM by the operatives is a consistent story of their above-the-law modus operandi. What will it take for those purporting to enforce the law to do so lawfully? The Galamsey fight gets into a second gear, with the state proceeding in a very lawless way in fighting Galamsey. Why can't the state also resort to the law to lawfully fight Galamsey? But as Otumfuo joins, is that a sign of victory? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And this morning, to help us with the discussion, joining us via Zoom is Professor Audrey Gajepo, Dean, School of Information and Communication Studies, University of Ghana. Here in the studio, Kenneth Ashigbe is convener, Media Coalition Against Galamsey, and has also been doing work with the Media Coalition seeking to assist journalists that get assaulted. Thank you for making the time to join us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Right.
It's my pleasure.
And for all of you, surprise, who have been asking, where is he? Abdul Malik Kwekubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Thank you so much. So excited to see you back.
Same here.
Right.
Yeah.
And our deepest condolences to you and your family for the double loss.
Thank you, and for your prayers, support, and commitment to the event.
Right.
Thank you. Right.
So that will be for the first segment. And for the second segment, these two gentlemen will remain with us. And we shall have Dr. Gladys Nyakwansa, co-principal investigator, University of York, UG Galamsey Research Team, and then Samuel Abujinapo, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, and MP for Damongo, will join us for the second segment. We're going to begin a first segment where we play you some sounds so that you can follow what is going on. But I want you to look at this briefly. There's a picture coming in your short, and I want you to look at it briefly to give you a certain sense of what may have prompted all of this. So that's a picture, and you see Chevy vehicles, brand new, bought by the state, and that were kept at the National Security Ministry area, and were kept there for a long time. So the journalist Caleb took these pictures earlier on in 2019, and so when the Fix Ghana, Fix the Country campaign came on, he posted it. When he posted it, Maslow leaders got in touch with him to tell him that the cars have long been distributed, so they are no more there. As you may have heard, Dr. Stephen Amwa, former head of Maslow, he has explained that about 90 of the cars are no more at that place and in this shape. So Caleb decided to confirm for himself by going back to this place to check if the cars are still there. Of course, as we know by Stephen Amwa's account, there should be 10% of the cars still sitting there. So he went there and started taking pictures of these videos of these cars. And that is what has brought him the trouble that he is in now. This is very similar to a situation that we found ourselves in, where the state, once again using our money, bought some galloper vehicles and they sat on one compound for 17 years. Take a look at that. 17 years. Manasseh Azore followed this story. Some of you have watched it a couple of times. But look at this video and look at those vehicles. Okay, these are pictures for now. Those were the galloper vehicles that the state bought. And we kept them at this location. And you can see how they looked before they were eventually auctioned off. We bought them for a total of $2.6 million. And then eventually we sold them off because they were rotten for some 300 and something thousand Ghana cedis. And all the time when they were sitting there were state institutions, departments, agencies that needed vehicles. The NCC has needed vehicles and cried for them for a long time. There are district assemblies that need just one vehicle to help them do something. These vehicles were sitting there, bought with our money. So if somebody had gone here and taken pictures of them without permission, why would they suffer? Now let's listen to Caleb.
The national security. The first time I went there, I didn't know the national security ministry was there. It was just the big one close to the conference center that I knew of. And because I had been there before, I could figure, in my mind,
the area?
In my mind, I knew the area. But when I got there, it was a very open space. And I said hello to the security. He was like, "What are you looking for?" I said, "Oh, I have an appointment." Much later, when the guy was roped in, he said, I told him I was looking for an abana. I think that was to get him out of trouble, and I didn't push back. Okay, so I got in there because I knew where the cars were. I went straight. And
so just describe the place.
Yeah.
You enter through the stadium side.
Yeah.
There are two big buildings in front of you.
Yeah.
Then there's a lot of
huge
cars.
space. Yeah.
But those are normal cars of other people.
Normal cars.
So these cars you're talking about, where are they?
So if you're getting closer to they call it ESS or EES, which is close to the conference center, the cars are just close to the entry to that huge building. Looks like very palatial. So that's where the cars were. So I took some photos and I was on my way.
These are the white cars?
These are the white cars.
The Chevy cars you took pictures of previously?
The Chevy cars I took pictures
to confirm whether the claim that they had been disbursed was true or not. So you needed evidence of the cars still being there.
Precisely.
How long did you spend taking those photos?
It was like not too long, because I needed to be swift and get out. And let me tell you what I saw. When I saw the cars, I realized that it was a fleet, but this time it was not as many as I first saw. They were fewer.
So suggesting that maybe some of the cars had been moved.
But still, you had weeds on it.
Some of them.
Just the same style as I saw it. Just that the earlier one, it was greener. So, okay. And I saw that the seats in the car had rubber on it. And
so it means that they are new and used cars.
And used cars. And you could tell the color of the car. A cracky.
So you walked to where the cars were parked.
Yes.
And then you took photos.
Yeah, so you could be taking while you're walking. Okay. So it's not like you stand there for everybody to see you are filming.
So you just took that?
You just took those. And then I was on my way out. Now here
the same entrance you came from the stadium side?
The same entrance.
So you didn't go, did you walk to the ministry or the building?
Not at all.
Did you cross the car park?
I had no business.
So you went towards the shed side?
I went towards the shed side, and that's where you see the black cars, some V8s and all. So I saw some V8s there, and they were all dusty, and I was like, hey.
So on your way out after taking the white Chevy
pictures? On my way out after taking the white Chevy, and I saw black V8s covered in dirt, and the tires were looking at V8 and V8. So I did a quick video, and I was just on my way out, because I was just really close to the gates out of the place. And then
so sorry, on your way out of the place, you did a quick video?
Yes.
of the other cars,
The V8s,
not the white cars.
Not the white cars. But my real
So were you walking whilst you were doing the video, or you were just standing?
Yeah, I was moving.
You were moving.
I was moving.
But were you? I just want to know how you were holding the camera, just to swear that was it a conspicuous thing? Were you saying, "Here are the cars"?
No.
So you were holding the phone.
So you can hold it close to your
Show
chest.
me how you did it.
So go like, okay. So you can hold the phone close to your chest while you're going.
So you were narrating.
Precisely.
So that you didn't film your face. You were filming the cars
At all.
on your way out.
Precisely.
These are the cars parked.
Under the shed.
Under the shed.
Right by the wall.
Okay.
So I was just about making my way out of the gate. And then there was this man in a car in there who saw me and said, "Hey, where are you going?" And then I said, I became jittery. I said, I came to see someone, but the person's not there. He said, "Who was that?" Basically, he had seen me. So he was like, "Why were you taking the videos?" And then I said, "I'm sorry." I tried to explain to him why I came. He wouldn't listen. He raised the alarm and said, "Arrest him." So he effected that call. And by
Do you
this
know
time,
around what time is this? Is it 2:33?
so this should be, in fact, I lost
Sense of time.
True.
But this was on your way after you had done your.
Precisely.
Do you know how long you spent in there before you were coming out?
Oh, I didn't do more than 20 minutes. It was really, because I've done something.
So it was a short time.
It was a really, really short time.
So he raises an alarm, and then what happens?
And then they come at me, and immediately I panicked. So I decided to share some of the photos I had taken, particularly of the white cars, which was my focus, with
Zoe,
my very good friend.
So whilst they were coming for you, you did that?
Yes.
Okay.
Just so that, and in my thinking, they were going to forcibly take the phone and delete it and caution me and say, "Walk out of here," or something like that. So I sent the videos to Zoe. But it turned out they were more, they were bent on showing me, they were bent on dealing with me, because then they took me to a small post when you enter
On the left.
On the left, there's a mango tree there. There are a number of police officers there. So by this time, a plainclothes gentleman had come and was like, "Yeah, these are the people who are causing blah 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 blah."
No, don't say blah blah blah.
Yeah, they said they are causing problem for us already. There is tension in the system, and they are trying to kind of. So
Just take your time. So the gentleman who raised the alarm had seen you recording some video near the cars that you were on the way out.
Yeah.
He raises an alarm, and what did they accuse you of when they initially raised the alarm?
First they were like, "How did I get in there? Forced entry or something like that." So then they take me to the police post where we met DSP Azugu. By this time, the gentleman in plain clothes had gone ahead of us to tell everybody that I had come there, I had breached the protocols, and I was trying to cause them some chaos and trouble. So all the police officers there became very agitated and aggressive towards me.
So the way he reported what you were doing got them angry.
Yes, infuriated. And so they took me to a smaller office. I showed them my ID card to tell them that, "Look, I'm from City. I agree. I shouldn't have taken them. Let's delete it and please let me go." But they wouldn't. They took me to see Azugu. I showed him my ID card. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "City." "Who do you know?" I said, "Richard Mensah." Then he called Richard. I didn't even give Richard's number. He called OJ. And so by the time he spoke to OJ, in my mind, then it was going to be sorted. By this time, they had taken my phone and they were looking through my chats. And they found out that I had sent photos to Zoe. That is when the gentleman started chatting Zoe as though I was the one talking to him. So around this time, they said, "Take a statement." They pushed me. I sat on a chair. They slapped me from the back. And they were...
Which of the people are you talking about?
The police officers. These are men in uniform. Some were bearded. They had guns.
Did you see any names?
Masks. Unfortunately, no. But I heard names like Osei and Owusu. Those are the names that I heard. So then...
And this is still in the small office?
This is still in the small office. Very close
Azugu's office, near the mango tree?
Yes. So I saw a very elderly policeman. He looks like the traditional policeman you see, because these were younger, with beard, more brazen. I was trying to appeal to them that I've worked with police before. I've heard, just please, sort of go out of them. By this time they had beaten him like, oh, but they was just still slapping me from the back. You'll be talking to another one, then someone will just come and slap you from the back, and you feel dizzy at once, and it's like, it was so fast.
In that same
space.
At this point, had they handcuffed you?
At this point, they had handcuffed me, and every now and again, one will come and press it harder so that I feel the head. I was so thirsty. One guy came in, he was like, oh, Caleb, then he got me water. Even drinking the water was difficult.
Because of the way the handcuff was. Did you speak to Azugu?
Yeah, after he spoke to OJ, he didn't deal with me much. He was very angry because the guy had really, really worked him up, and he was so sure that I was just there to cause mayhem for them.
Do you know what the gentleman told them? Did you tell them you were reporting, or you were broadcasting, or just filming?
He told them that I had come there to film the national security installation and some other things, which, in all sincerity, I didn't do.
It was the cars that you had come to take.
So if you are taking the pictures secretly, you are not watching. It's later when you finish that you pay attention to it. So if mistakenly I'm taking any of the national security buildings, that was not even my job. And I tried to explain to them, but still they wouldn't listen. Then along the line, they called somebody captain or something. He came in some green jacket, pink shirt. He looked very civil and nice. So I tried to talk to him, that boss, please help me. By this time they had taken me out. We were under a mango tree. They had taken me out. We were under a mango tree. When I saw him, I tried to, immediately he said I should kneel down. And then he kicked me. So I'm told,
this person is not in military uniform.
He's not in police uniform. He looks very dapper.
He's wearing green.
Yes.
Do you know his name?
Pink shirt. What could his name be? Yes, Ajiman.
They called him Ajiman.
And
so when he came, you were trying to appeal to him.
I was trying to appeal to him. I said, they have beaten me enough. Like, I beg you, like, just let me go. At least they have deleted the thing. Because he asked me to kneel down, and I'm told he's there. He kicked me. You can imagine where his feet landed.
He kicked you in the groin?
Yes.
At this point, did you fall? Or you already knelt?
I was already kneeling, so I was dusty and all. So at the time he gave them instruction, when we're going back to where Azubu was, the boy said, Captain Kasasi Amburu.
That's what they told you?
That's what he told me.
So then he leaves you there. What did he tell you after he slapped you?
He was very angry. So he was like, you're trying to cause, I can't quote him verbatim because too much was running through my mind. But by this time, they were upbeat on coming to the office to fetch Zoe.
You knew that they were going to do that?
Yeah, they were saying that. And so I think in their chats with Zoe, they had asked her where she was, and she said Studio Annex. And they asked me, where is Studio Annex? And I said, it's in our office. So,
which means that Zoe was chatting thinking she was talking to you?
Exactly.
Because she didn't know that you had been arrested. Amazing. This is the point of view. Caleb Kuda is telling his story. Zoe will join us as well. This is the story that happened at City FM on Tuesday, the 11th of May. Caleb Kuda has just narrated the first part of the story, and that will not be all. There was a lot more to come. When we come back, we'll show you how the team came with Caleb to City to arrest Zoe and what happened in the aftermath. Stay with us.
Just like their hands are so big and thick. One hit is like Medros. So by this time, they wanted to come and pick Zoe. And so they said, like, where is Studio Annex? And I tell them it's in the office. And I was in cuffs all the time.
So they are chatting with Zoe, who thinks she's chatting with you.
Yes.
And they are coming here to pick her up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then they come with like 3 pickups, and I was in one. There were 2 guys by me, one here, one here. This guy sounds a bit reasonable. I didn't know best. I was trying to explain to him. I said, no, we'll be there for more person. And that's how. We're trying to have a rapport, thinking that things will ease up. And the guy here, oh my God. Then so we got here.
You were flanked by the 2 of them.
The 2 of them.
When you tried to explain what you were doing, are you saying you didn't understand or he wouldn't listen? What were they saying to you in the car when you were coming?
Yes, so then the gentleman, he's fairer. he's fine. He was a bit more calmer and all, but he was just trying to say that the media is causing problem for the system and all that kind of thing. And the guy in plain clothes who was chatting Zoe was in the front seat, and then he kept engaging me here and there. So while we were coming, they came with one of the cars ahead with the strobe lights. And
so whilst you are saying this, we'll now show you those images. So Caleb is one of the pickups that are parked on the screen you're seeing. So then Zoe is standing outside on the phone. Who were you talking to? Were you on the phone?
Yeah, I was talking to someone else.
You were talking to somebody else.
Yeah.
So you had left where we were and you were talking on the phone.
Yes.
So when they came, they knew it was Zoe, or you told them this was Zoe?
They asked me if that's her. In fact, they said, oh, you know, some of them know us. So
they saw you on TV.
So the moment they saw her, they knew that was her. And for me, because she was on the phone and I suspected they were engaging her, I felt she was actually out because of them. And when we got here, I was in the car and everybody rushed in. And I was like, let me stay in the car. She said, no,
I wanted to embarrass you.
They just brought me down for everybody to see that I was in cuffs. And the neighborhood, people just came around.
Yeah, but people see you in cuffs doesn't necessarily mean you've done anything wrong. So I'm like, if I had caused one of the serious judgment deaths in this country, they beat me that way, I felt that handcuff, I would have understood. But I have friends from Lagos who are still unemployed, and there are cars here, and I hear that these cars are still there. I'm like, okay, let's go and see if it's still there or not. So that's your crime. Let's continue the story. So you are standing outside. Obviously, you've been pointed out. What happened?
Okay, so before that, I received videos from Caleb at 2:34 p.m. and I saw it around 2:52. And because I already knew about his earlier post and what it brought about, when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, it's still there. And he says, yes, where are you now? At this point, I thought I was chatting him. And I told him where I was. I said, Studio Annex. Then the next thing that came is, I'm hungry. Let's find some food to eat. Let's go and find something to eat. And then...
presumably to lure you out of the office.
That was the intention. So if I had said, okay, where? Once the person told me where I was supposed to come, they would have picked me up from there.
But this, I didn't know who you were chatting to.
I didn't know.
You thought it was Caleb.
So I received a call from Richard Mensah, OJ, and he says, Zoe, where are you? I said, I'm here. He came. He said, did Caleb send you anything? I said, yes. He says he's been arrested. I said, oh, wow. And that is how come I was able to make sense of the message I received. Because Caleb and I are very good friends, even on social media. I mean, but not to the extent of, let's go and find something to eat. You get it? So that raised eyebrows. So I exclaimed, hey, where are you there? And he says, on my way to the office. And I said, okay, get here and let's talk. And the person says, okay. At this point, they realized that I didn't answer the way they wanted. So they called me using Caleb's phone. So the person calls and says, hey, I'm so-and-so, Director of Operations, National Security, we need you to come here now. And I said, come here for what? What is my crime? What have I done? And he says, and I said, I can't come there because I have superiors, I have bosses. You have to let them know because once, and he said, oh, your colleague Caleb is here and we have checked on his phone and we have realized that he sent you some video. So we need you here for question. And I said, okay, that's fine. Let me get to my bosses and then I'll revert. The person was calm on the phone. He says, okay. So I hung up, called Richard Mensah. Why? He said, the people have called me. They use Caleb's phone. He says, oh, but these people, I told them DSP Azubu is dealing with me. So they should, deal with me on that level. So he says, call them back and tell them that I'll deal with DSP Azubu. So I called back. There was no response. I went to the cafeteria to eat. And that is when I met you and Samens there. So I got a call and then I walked out to the car park to receive the call. So I stopped eating. So it was at that point that I saw 3 police vehicles, top speed, coming. They just parked. There she is. Oh, no. And he just walked to me.
Who is this he? Is it a policeman?
No, he was plainclothes.
Plainclothes. In mask as well?
Yes, and he was the leader of the group. And he says, okay, I was the one chatting with you. I was like, okay, give me your phone. So he seized my phone immediately.
He snatched your phone?
Yes.
Whilst you were standing outside?
Outside. So I told the person, I'll call you back. I just hung up and he took my phone from me. Then I heard someone say, catch her, arrest her. And I was like, for what? Then I heard that.
This is the phone you're looking for. You have the phone. Okay.
Then someone called the gun. I was scared at that point.
He cocked the gun?
Yes. I got scared at that point. And because I knew you and Samens were at the cafeteria, I immediately ran to the place. So they were chasing me there. So it actually chased me there. Someone had to use the back because he thought maybe I was going so that they'll catch me. So that is when I got there and Samens says I should sit down. And so he picked it up from there. And so that is what happened.
Wow. This is still the point of view. We're trying to give you the story from our side, what happened. Caleb could.
Right, so that's a bit of the long narration of the story as told by Caleb and Zoe Abubedu, all of City. And I'm going to start the conversation, but I need to play one other sound to you, video to you, because we believe that whilst it is Caleb who has undergone this for now, we need to broaden this discussion and to look at when this will stop. And then what I'm going to play to you is to tell you a story that everything Caleb said, I believe him, and I have a reason for believing him. I have dealt with a number of people who have been at national security, and the story is the same method, consistent. Listen to this one.
Then press ups.
So there was nothing. So what happened is what you've described.
Yes, they didn't electrocute me. They didn't use the taser on my penis, to be frank.
They didn't do that.
I don't want to lie. No, in fact, they even gave me food to eat well so that I could get strength for more slaps before they interrogated me. So yes, they gave me food to eat. I won't lie. I know the lady. When I went to the I saw the lady. I said, "Thank you very much for feeding me and feeding me well."
So they slapped you and they used tasers on you.
Yes.
On which part of your body?
Yeah, my arm here.
Your arm.
My both arm, left and right.
And they handcuffed you.
They handcuffed me behind.
And then they asked you to do what you describe as military style.
Yes, my head down, my legs up against the wall.
Your head down, your legs up.
Can I do the demonstration here?
Yeah, do the demonstration. We'll film it. So he's trying to do it. I just want to know what they asked him to do.
Okay.
Listeners, a really harrowing experience from a colleague journalist, Emmanuel Ajafo Abugri, who's demonstrating for us when we're filming it right now.
Okay.
So his arms are on the ground.
So
hands are on the ground. Yes. And then his legs are up against the wall.
This is how they made me do it. This way.
Wow.
This is it. Exactly.
For how long?
I did this till the point I could no more do. Then you see my back?
Yes.
They hit and I fell like this.
They hit your back and you fell?
Yeah.
Wow.
Then he told me to do press up and stand up. So I had to do press up like this.
And
so I did the press up to a point I couldn't do that. I felt like this and I said, "Boss, I'm weak." So
wow.
he pulled, then one guy put his hand here and pulled me up this way. When he pulled me up this way with him, then the other guy came with the elbow. Yeah. So when I was then, and I fell again.
They were just brutalizing you.
So when I fell, then they asked me to rise up. When I rise up, then I couldn't breathe. You know, your backbone controls your nervous system.
Yeah.
So your breath and all those things pass through there.
Yeah.
You see?
Wow.
Yeah. So your backbone.
All this was within
system.
that period that they took.
My brother, I won't lie. I'm a northerner. I was properly trained. I won't lie. Why should I lie? I respect people in this country. I respect the president. I respect certain people in this country. So why should I lie? I don't know why. Why should I lie? If they didn't beat me, my brother, why should I come and say
So two things. They interrogated you and beat you up on the basis of two articles.
Because yes, I have to confess who that Constant Kwabin is and confess
So who is this Constant Kwabin?
My brother, I don't even know him.
But is this somebody who exists?
I don't know whether he exists or not. You know, opinion piece, Bernard, you know how this game is. Sometimes even you can send an opinion piece to Graphic and Co. They publish. They don't necessarily have to know you. You can send to media houses, feature stories. They publish. They don't necessarily have to know you. Whether you are a human being, you are a ghost, you are living in Mongolia or whatever. That is up to you. But once it's past the editorial test, they'll publish.
Let me read an article a statement I received from the information minister.
Right. So that's the story of Emmanuel Ajafo. In 2019, he and his colleague at the Modern Ghana news establishment were picked up. And they said national security people stormed their premises with guns, and they picked them up and they used polythene bags, black, covered their faces, pushed them into their vehicles, took them to their premises, and kept them for a number of days. And then, I'm sure you would have followed the story. I became a lawyer for the two of them until one of the guys was compromised to say that nothing really happened. And they went to court. We went to the court for only once, the criminal court. They said they wanted to prosecute them for cyber offenses. The case died that minute. Right. Okay, so as we speak, there is a journalist who reports from Asankregwa, and his name is Tebiri. So he's a correspondent for Accra-based TV station in the Western North. Now, he also reports that in Asankregwa, on May 7, he saw a scene of violent security operation at a Petroland fuel station in Asankregwa Township. It was a raid on a casino attached to the said fuel station involving a group of uniformed police officers and other plainclothes officers. So, Tebiri says when he identified himself to a police officer as a journalist and inquired about the operation, he was only told, quote, "We are from national security," and brushed aside. Then he said, "I watched as security officers ransacked the facility, breaking everything, including money boxes, and taking out the money in them. But then some of them began destroying the CCTV cameras installed at the place. And this raised my suspicion that the exercise could be unauthorized." Now, being suspicious, he called the Amenfi Divisional Police Commander, that's a responsible journalist, at a discreet distance to inform him of the incident, only to be pounced upon by the security agents and brutalized. He says they smashed my phone and proceeded to slap and hit and kick me several times. Not satisfied, they pressed me to the ground and poured water on me amidst curses and insults on journalists. Then the Media Foundation for West Africa, which has gone to his aid, say they contacted the Amenfi Divisional Police Commander, Chief Superintendent Nana Kumi, who confirmed the incident and said that when he arrived at the scene upon Tebiri's call, the security operatives had put the journalists in the bucket of their pickup. Ironically, the assault on the journalists came just 4 days after the Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, commissioned the Office for Coordinated Mechanism on Safety of Journalists as part of activities to mark World Freedom Day. Now, Tebiri, as we speak, I don't know at this moment, but he had been at the Thomas Allen Rooney Memorial Hospital at Asankregwa for ear problems as a result of the slaps. And now I can tell you that when they give you those slaps from your back, the first thing you feel very direct is in your ear. So you remember some 16 years ago, a group of soldiers asked me to get into an armored car at the Asawasi by-elections at the front of the Asawasi Collation Center. What was my crime? I had blown the whistle on 2 pickup vehicles that were carrying foreign ballot papers. I mean, there was an attempt to steal the elections, the by-election. So I blew the whistle on those 2 vehicles, and the police impounded them. Now, I got to the collation center to finish the process, and the soldiers started to manhandle me. I was actually on the phone reporting to the BBC, and I was reporting to Joy at the same time. When they asked me to get into the armored car, I asked them, for what? They won't explain, except to give me more slaps, and from my back, I could hear it. So I know what it means to feel it in your ears. So they managed to push me to the armored car, but to get me into the armored car was a problem because I refused to climb in there. So on that day, I remember City FM's OJ, we call him OJ, and we call him Commander. He's Richard Mensah. He got one of the soldiers to insist that they stop. And then one of my colleagues, Ohim Tevia, also was shouting and calling to my editors. And then the police commander then also came. And then I was released. So I have a feeling of how it goes. Now, let's begin from here. Ken, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
So you have listened to Caleb.
Yes.
You have listened to Abu Baidu. You probably must have listened to Samens and the rest of them because they also witnessed a part of it. Yeah.
So, well, you see, Samson, if you don't want to believe anything at all, just look at the way a national security setup go to a media house, the fourth estate of the realm. Can you imagine if this had happened to the first, the second, the third? That they would have gone to Jubilee House like that? That they would have gone to Parliament like that? They would have gone to any court like that? You know the thing I said to myself when I saw this? What would have happened if this was when I was general manager of Joy FM? Or I was chief operating officer of Multi TV, or I was managing director of Graphic? I would definitely have been shot. Because there's definitely no way I was going to allow them into the premises without a warrant. And there was definitely also no way I was going to allow them to take any of my staff without a lawyer accompanying it. You know, so I think that at this particular point in time, it is very, very, very sad that as a country, we are being exposed to this but it is not new. I remember very well, and sometimes you don't even need to use a journalist. I remember the example of E.T. Mensah, when he had been taken, to the BNI and he was talking, and I remember him saying, it rings in my ear, very stinky, the place that they had put him. So we have allowed these things to happen since we moved away from the revolution into the 1992 constitution, and it has been perpetuated and continues and continues. And this has to stop. And it's at this time that we should insist, especially, look at the way they are so unsophisticated, forgetting that what they were doing was going to be seen. Is this how? Even if it was even, somebody who had murdered somebody who had taken some national, is that how we treat the person? Journalism is not a crime. I still insist on that. And you see, you remember there's a case of Pius who was shot at the elections, and that case they go to court, the cases are not being heard. There are several of them. There's the case of even if you come into this house, Latif, nothing seems to happen. And I think that
okay, so Latif, we are in court because we sued.
Yes, but that is not what is supposed to happen.
We sued, we are in court.
That is civil.
Yeah, that's civil. The police apparently can't find their CCTV, so we are dealing with it. We'll deal with it.
I'm saying that from the point of view of the state, the fact that it is really important that as the state put these people into check, and most of the time, it might not be sanctioned by the state authorities.
Right.
But what we do when these things happen is what then allows them and emboldens them to continue doing this.
Right.
If in all the cases, like the modern Ghana case, for example, if these people who perpetuated that had been punished, it would serve as an example for these people who also did this. And my heart bleeds that we allowed, there's one of the people who now sits on the Supreme Court that now would make pronouncement and becomes law. They set up a committee, a former IGP.
Okay, can you do this? We will come to all those aspects and discuss the question of whether or not the journalists broke any rules and all of that, and the recommendations of the Yawaso Wegon Commission report. But for now, I'm just picking your views on the narrations you hear, and what you have to say briefly about them. I am told that Tebiri has seen a specialist at Bebiani, and the report indicates that he had a problem with the left ear. That's where, with the part that was pounded quite a bit. In Latif's situation, which you referred to, Latif, unfortunately, has gone even out of this country to the best of medical facilities. Latif will have to live for the rest of his life with a problem. Yes, Koku.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting where my brother started from. And indeed, I think you laid the basis, except that you asked him to stop going for specifics.
Right.
But we're talking here of a certain culture of impunity that has a historical antecedents, you know, over a period. And as he said, it's not new. The fact that it's not new doesn't make it right.
Right.
And the call for actually not just mitigating, but combating it is in order. But I would want to read some few paragraphs of a document, a paper released by the State of Journalist Safety in Ghana. This is by Sulemana Brahma, Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa.
Right.
November 2014. This research he did, which I think he presented to an international audience, spans 10 years. So from 2004 to 2014. They've subsequently done some on 2015 to today.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to find out whether there are any changes, maybe in terms of the statistics.
They are not. Anytime I've had to defend journalists in court, when they sue, I go to Media Foundation for West Africa website and I pick the list.
Yeah.
Then I show to a judge, see what is being done.
So that's the key. But if you would permit me.
Right, go ahead.
It says, it is important, however, to emphasize that freedom of the press may not be synonymous with the safety of journalists. This fact further underlines the relevance of the adoption of a resolution specifically focusing on safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. So while Ghana is recognized as having a press freedom environment, it doesn't necessarily mean journalists are safe in Ghana, especially if the country is assessed based on UNESCO's safety of journalists indicators. As shown in Table 1 below, and the table is there, the fact that Ghana is among countries with good press freedom environments does not mean there haven't been violations against the media in the 10-year period that this paper focuses on. In the last 10 years, the Media Foundation for West Africa has recorded a total of 138 incidents of violations against journalists and media workers, representing an average of nearly 14 violations a year. It must be emphasized that some violations may not have been captured by the foundation, and thus the number of violations could possibly be more than the 138 recorded by the foundation. The numbers in Table 1 below also reveal that physical attacks on journalists have been the most prevalent from the form of violation in Ghana during the last 10 years. Over 67% of all violations recorded by the foundation, 93 out of 138 in the last 10 years, have been physical attacks on journalists. The next prevalent form of violation is detention of journalists with 16 incidents. Year on year, the worst year during the decade was 2008 with 24 violations. Even though 2008 was an election year, the 2012 figure of 9 violations, also in an election year, compared with figures for other non-election years, does not suggest any relationship between elections and incidents of press freedom violations. Other bad years for journalists during the decade were 2009, 21 violations, 2006, 20 violations, 2010, 16 violations, and 2014, 14 violations so far. And this is critical. In terms of the perpetrators of violations, security agencies, police and military have been the worst culprits, accounting for over 38% of all violations against journalists. That is 53 out of the 138. Next to the security agencies are political party supporters, 30 violations, followed by individuals, 22 violations. Other abusers of press freedom, as captured in Table 2 below, have been organized stroke pressure groups, state officials, and the courts that impose crippling damages or fines against the media. Unfortunately, perpetrators of violations go unpunished, or at best, they simply render apology to their victims. The lack of conscious and determined effort on the part of the state to punish crimes against journalists have the potential of fostering impunity and emboldening perpetrators and potential ones to commit further violations. On whether or not there have been improvements in the state of journalistic safety in Ghana since the adoption of the UN resolution, the evidence suggests no improvement, at least as far as violations of media rights are concerned. And as I said,
so
I have
by May 2nd, 2019, the updates from the Media Foundation for West Africa was that in 2018, the country recorded 16 assault cases against journalists. In 2018, 16 assault cases against journalists and media workers. In 2019, that's by May, the country had recorded 5 cases, including the killing of Ahmed Swale, the death threats against Manasseh Azuri-Awuni, and brutalities against 3 journalists from the New Times Corporation, and attacks on 2 media houses, Accra Base, XYZ, and Dero FM in Nkoranza.
Yes, so I agree with the point that we have not made any improvement relative to curing that impunity. In spite of the fact that 2018, we ranked number 1. But you see, that doesn't mean there were no violations of media freedoms. It's clearly incumbent, and not just on journalists or media owners, but I think the entirety of the citizenry, especially the focused civil society groups, to take up this issue, deal with them consciously. You said you referred to a court case. That's one of the options. There are bodies like Shraj and the rest who can intervene based on, of course, the provisions of their act and the Constitution. I'm sure we are going to get a chance to deal with the specifics.
That's right.
As you played to us.
That's right.
So this is just a general statement. You see, some of us, and I will end that way, some of the things happening have also experienced those things. And that is why it is very important that when such things happen, as much as you want to be fair, at once you want to be objective, it's difficult to deny that there is a culture or a subculture of impunity. Some of us have had a situation where, in the years gone by, military personnel led by ministers of state have invaded our premises to effect arrest. Okay? We had 2 of our ladies who were helping the Crusading Guide and Tiger Eye in a joint venture. You remember? Busted at the Tama port for secretly filming. We'll come to those specifics, because I'm sure when we come to where you are talking about the law.
When you listen to Caleb and Zoe and maybe Samalata Mensah tell their encounter, what do you have to say about that specific?
You see, well, perhaps I think you've jumped the gun yourself, but because you've asked me, let me address it. Look, the way and manner they invaded City FM premises is unacceptable. It ought not to have happened in this state of technology and media state institutions relationship. Contacting the management by telephone.
They were already speaking to the management.
Yes, so things could have been done in a very neat way, tidier way. That whole thing lacked finesse in terms of the operational conduct of the exercise.
Okay.
One cannot defend it. But you see, that is distinct for me from the subsequent disclosures relative to torture. For me, it is the high point of this unfolding drama. But there we have a certain difficulty, and I've raised it with City FM. I don't know if I have the right to mention the name of the person I spoke to, but I raised it, and he agreed that my concern was legitimate. He explained. You see, why is it that the disclosure of this reported or alleged torture did not come first at the time it ought to have come? We are all newsmen. We know the worth of news, timing and everything. The gentleman was released, according to City FM sources, by 7:57. By 7:50, he was at the office. Then he was asked to go home. Why? No debriefing? Even though they didn't send him on the official assignment as we've been told by Bernard. It is your employee, your reporter. And if he comes, he's been released. No interview, nothing. And he goes home 24 hours later before we are told this most serious violation, if indeed it happened. You know, you say you believe it, and I know why you say so, because of the culture of impunity,
right?
Because of the experience.
But beyond that, beyond that, why I believe it,
yeah.
I want to make
Please do.
I want to make it clear.
Please do.
It's not just about believing it. You see, this thing was not one that they did covertly. Normally, they do it covertly, capture you and go and put you in a room and beat you without anybody knowing. But this one, they did it where people saw.
No, wait.
I'm telling you why. I'm telling you where I'm coming from. They did it where people saw. In fact, there were people who saw the way Caleb was being beaten, and they confronted the officers and asked them, "Do you want to kill this boy?"
You know what? You have the benefit of that
right.
eyewitness. I do not have. I have to be honest with you.
All
and
right.
That's why I'm happy with the investigation. Well, it means that we have witnesses who appear before any independent investigations to testify.
Yeah, but
that's fantastic.
But still, with or without the witnesses, this is a story I will believe any day.
No, it doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
Why call for investigations if we just have to leave it at the point of a personal belief?
All right.
We don't have to do that.
No, my point is that
I don't think we should have a banter.
I know too many such stories that's so consistent.
But I do.
Right.
Same. I do same.
All right.
But what I do is that I move from the general to subject the specific to an interrogation.
Okay, that's fine.
In order to get all the details.
That's all right.
You being a lawyer will know better than I that if we're going to prosecute or go to court, you may need those specific details.
That's right.
Including the eyewitnesses. And that is part of what we should mobilize in order to actually cure this culture of impunity.
Right.
Not just the personal belief. But the point I am making is that, look, why some people are raising doubts, and the person I spoke to at City agreed with me that it's legitimate, even though he explained why the gentleman was not debriefed or the gentleman was not asked questions until the following day. Don't forget, Bernard had gone on air to Metro TV, Good Evening Ghana, on such an issue. At that material point in time, he had to have had the benefit of the torture. Look, it's the high point. And the overt things they did, I agreed with you. I said the invasion was so overt, they were captured on video.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that there are others who also saw the torture, because the torture was not done publicly.
That's right.
Unlike the invasion of the City FM premises.
Now, if you listen to Caleb, part of his narration, he says there were these guys who were sitting there, and he tried to talk to them, and they warned him, don't speak to them.
That's his narration.
Right.
That was not captured on CCTV or anything. I'm not dismissing it.
No,
we
cannot say it was not captured on CCTV. We don't have a CCTV yet.
Well, CCTV we haven't seen.
That's right.
I'm ready to concede.
All right.
We have seen perhaps why I made that point is well, we've seen the City FM one.
That's right.
It's been put out there. You put
That's
some here. Those you are referring to, we don't have. And let me be honest with you. I would be so happy if indeed those evidences have been captured. Because we are all asking for proof.
That's right.
We're asking for investigations. With those things, the investigation will be very well rooted.
Right.
Okay? But I'm saying that sometimes, you see, we should try and understand some of these things. You let the gentleman go home. He goes to the hospital the next day. I was asking for a copy of the medical report. I have not been given a copy. I was promised, but I was not given, or they were unable to deliver to him. But you see, you don't allow elements of doubt.
I agree with you, and I think those are some of the things that we as media owners and media practitioners, there are no standard SOPs that we've developed, or maybe, and so that's where people like you would, how have we handled this so that we can learn from it? Because as we speak, graphic, there is one gentleman who was beaten in whole, who has currently lost the sense of smell. So immediately, yes, and this happened earlier when there was a demonstration, had gone to cover it, and the police beat him up. And so I think that we all need to develop these things, because even in Caleb's case, and I completely agree with Kweku, but for me, it's not to believe it, but to say that some things that we should have done. Immediately he came. It is definitely debriefing and even taking him to the hospital. Because if you know that, like me, knowing how Tim, what's his name, the gentleman from Graphic had happened to him, this thing, if you don't handle it properly, in the immediate aftermath it happens, the health implications could even be there.
Right. So
and definitely I agree with
Let me get to my guest on Zoom. I think we have Professor Audrey Gje with us, and we also have Professor Kwesi Enin. But what you guys are talking about, there are some who speak about double trauma, that if it happens and immediately you want to debrief, you put them in a setting double trauma.
I was giving this.
And you are aware that I have been teaching media about preserving the evidence. And so there's a way to deal with
the gentleman. You ought to have taken him home from the facility, national security facility. But he was allowed to come within the office.
Okay.
How many minutes would he take to tell you that I've been beaten?
All right.
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Professor Audrey Gje, your first comments on what you have heard so far about the treatment of Caleb and Zoe and City.
Thank you very much for having me on. I think that your two guests have laid a solid foundation about why we ought to be concerned. We ought to be concerned about national security and the terrible culture of lawlessness, brutality they exhibit, and to recognize that there is an obvious crisis of impunity that the government and the Minister of National Security must address with urgency. There is no question in my mind. And it has to, in this instance, we're talking about the treatment of journalists, and that's egregious. But I think also that we should be concerned about the treatment of other people that come in the purview of national security. It is a problem. The Minister for National Security is a former lawmaker who was well respected when he was in Parliament. So he should be held accountable for the actions in his ministry and asked to address what seems to be a systemic problem within the ministry. Then, of course, we are going to have to hold the individuals implicated in this case accountable. The Kenala Champons that were mentioned in the videos, Azugus, etc. They must be investigated and sanctioned. The word impunity has been bandied around, but impunity will continue if those responsible are not held responsible and sanctioned clearly. I think this issue raises other issues aside from national security's behavior. It raises issues relating to journalistic duties, methods, and ethics. It raises issues relating to the deterioration safety for journalists, which we need to talk about, and you've already started talking about. And it raises issues on the role of different stakeholders, the media organizations themselves. How do they protect the safety of their journalists? When these matters happen, how do they ensure that they get justice for their journalists? The GJA itself, there were some missteps we saw with the GJA president, So we need to hold them accountable. The National Media Commission. Now, the Minister for Information talked about the framework, the framework for mechanism for the safety of journalists, and it emerges out of a UN plan of action on safety of journalists and the issue of impunity and related international resolutions and protocols, which Ghana is a signatory to. We proudly hosted World Press Freedom Day in 2018 because we prided ourselves on being one of the best when it comes to press freedom in Africa. But clearly, press freedom, as I heard Kweku Baku say, and I want to reinforce, press freedom does not equate to safety of journalists. So we need to fast track this work of the committee that was inaugurated to make sure that they do work. And what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to prevent violence against journalists. They're supposed to protect journalists, and they're supposed to prosecute perpetrators. So we have to be sure that all three happen. I think that the media owners, the media houses have an obligation to make sure that when their journalists go out to work or they are properly prepared. And I'm not sure that that always happens. I know that in this case, they claim that they didn't know that Caleb was working on the story. So there are issues that are raised about journalists' safety because, you know, just watching the tapes, you will see how vulnerable Caleb is. And Caleb is a journalist who goes out and covers news and information, sometimes does investigations all the time. But you can tell his vulnerability and his naivety even in that clip.
Yeah.
So it calls for what are the processes in place in newsrooms to encourage courageous investigative journalism, but one that ensures that journalists are safe. You see, what investments have media organizations made in training journalists on how to probe deeply, uncover truth, verify truth, but at the same time feel safe? What are the protocols in place that says when you get a call that you're journalist in distress, you must do A, B, C, D? And so, as Kweku Baku says, he should have been immediately debriefed, but he was made to go home for 24 hours and then came back. So there are all of these issues that have to be addressed. I think that most media houses are simply not prepared to protect their journalists properly.
Okay.
They just simply have not addressed it as a major issue.
Right.
They've assumed that Ghana is a place where journalists can be free to operate. But that is not the truth. As we said, look at the number of incidents you've just pointed to. Can you imagine how many you will uncover if you did an exhaustive research? I think that the police culture, the security culture in this country is a problem. And I know that on a certain level, they themselves are concerned about it. So you see that, you know, the Police Command and Staff College in Winneba invites journalists. I go there sometimes on media training. The Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College does so as well. So anytime you go there, you can see clearly why that kind of course is needed. There's a deep distrust of our security agencies for journalists. They have not been made to understand that journalists have a particular role to play in our democracy. However uncomfortable that role is, you know, it's in the public interest.
All right.
Just as their role is in the public interest. And therefore, they ought to respect that.
Let me talk to Professor Kwesieni, and then we'll return to you to talk about the questions of journalistic ethics that you raise and the methods and the questions of safety. How can that be ensured? At least we can give media houses some ideas as to how to improve on that if they have something already that they are working with. There are media organizations that can invest money. I've done training for graphic reporters, for example, so I know they invest money, multimedia invest money to do some of these things. But the other places, what do they do? Professor Enin, what the journalists suffered and the media house suffered, from what you know, is this peculiar to journalists in their encounter with the national security?
No, I mean, it's far from it. And I think Audrey captures it very well, that this goes beyond journalists and media practitioners. What we are seeing is not just a definitional crisis of what national security is and what regime security is. There seems to be a conflation of the two, that we are replacing the nation's interest with a certain wrong perception and understanding of how to perform security roles and functions that suits a particular, interest group. So I think the broader issues that I would want to raise this morning relates to, first, this, conflation between national security and regime security. I think that is the major problem here. When the names that have been mentioned perform their actions, in what context do they think they are working? Are they working for Ghana, or they are behaving in a manner that they think their political masters will find it useful? And I think when we use the terminology national security, then what we have experienced, or what Caleb has experienced, is both intolerable, unacceptable, and a disgrace. Because national security responsibilities first deals with the oversight responsibilities of the various agencies under the national security framework to ensure that they are responsible, their actions are effective. National security's most critical function is about joint assessments of the threat posture. Okay? So the work that Caleb was doing, to what extent was that assessed as posing a threat to the state? Okay? And if that was analyzed by the Azugus of this world, that it poses a threat to the state, it does not justify the kind of treatment that he has been given. The third point relates to what our national security priorities are. Okay, national security priorities must once more be based on the threat assessment that I am talking about, provide expert advice on security breaches. What are the changing dynamics of the threats as we see it? Okay, so what it comes down to is that by looking or by understanding national security within a threat assessment perspective, it allows the various agencies to understand what their tasks are and to follow through to ensure that these tasks are carried out by the various agencies. Okay, so there are broader issues once more with recruitment. How is the recruitment done? The quality of the training and the content of the training. How do we perform our oversight responsibilities? Now, and by oversight, I'm talking particularly about the internal oversight, administrative procedures within the national security infrastructure as to the performance and effectiveness of their actions. But even more importantly, of Parliament's role. I have heard Honorable Agaga this morning talking about Parliament doing something, but that is probably 4 or 5 days too late, too little. The Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior ought to have acted on this as quickly as possible, precisely because there's a very discomforting culture of dismissiveness, of arrogance, of violence, of public abuse. And it is not just, once more, to come back to Audrey's good point. This is not just about journalists. Prior to the elections, we saw somewhere in Tema the brutalization of an army officer in uniform by 4 gangsters from the so-called national security apparatus. Now, nothing has been done. And therein lies my concern with this letter that has been written and signed by one of the operatives, that they will investigate and do something.
Okay, Professor
has given us a long list of cases where these incidences have taken place.
Okay.
I doubt very much if we've ever seen the results of any of these investigations.
Right.
So, 2 last points, please. So, what comes under the designation national security? Under what process? What are the processes and mechanisms for designating something as being of national security interest? How is it done? When do we do it? And what institutions, infrastructure, frameworks are designated or occasions are designated as of being national security interest? This case raises huge, huge questions of ethics.
Yeah. So, Professor, do you mind educating us, because I want us to go to that bit now, because we are being told, we are being asked, that people like you, Samson, you are saying there was no crime committed whatsoever. Well, I've read the statement of the national security, and they don't say any crime was committed. What's the name? Caleb, when he was being picked, these are officers who must have been trained how to conduct an arrest, which requires you to tell the person first why he's been arrested. That is to say which crime it is. They didn't do anything like that. As we speak, we know that there's no prosecution, there's no charge. But we have been asked the question, go to Pentagon and take pictures and come and tell me that in Ghana, National Security Ministry, people are free to take pictures there and not get into any trouble. So educate us. I know that in the US, their criminal code provides, there's a specific provision. I'll read it to all of us if we are interested later, which empowers the president to so designate the places that they want to label as national security zone. And therefore, if you breach, then they will refer to that law to prosecute you. Please, do you know of any such in Ghana?
Something, can I interrupt to add one more thing so that Professor Inin will?
Okay.
And it's telling for me as a journalist. National Security issued a press release.
Right.
Please read the top of that press release. It says confidential.
That's right.
Yet it is a press release that is supposed to go into the public domain. So that question you just asked, what is designated as national security and confidential must be clarified for us, because they go about declaring everything as a national security zone.
Right. Now, Professor Eni, would you want to educate us, because we are hearing stories?
Well, let me very quickly respond to Audrey's very good point about the word confidential. I think in the hierarchy of classification, that could have been a slip. I think in the hierarchy of security/intelligence classification, confidential is the lowest classification, basically meaning that almost everybody can see it. But for those of us coming from the civil society side, of course, when something is confidential, then it's not something that you go showing around and sharing with people. So this is something that at the KIPTC, those of us from the civilian professional side have had to be educated that in military speak or intelligence speak, the word confidential, or actually in the hierarchy of how limited a document must be circulated, then the word confidential is actually the least. So, yes, they will place the word confidential on almost anything. A document from one office to the other will still be, that word confidential will appear on it. But I think once more, this is, there is a need for a broader public education about the way these terminologies are bandied around, the way it creates a disconnect between those who provide a particular type of security service and those of us who are recipients of that service. But more importantly, taking into consideration where we are located and the need for partnerships and collaboration. To learn to use a language that is more dialogic, that is more inclusive, that is more friendly. Now, to come to Samson's point, and here realize the ethical point that I think the three earlier speakers have been talking about. I think we also need to discuss the negotiating two very important points. One is the public interest in information and the state's desire to classify certain infrastructure, information, development as not necessary or not important for the public purview. This is a conversation that I think we need to have. Is it everything that the state has designated as of being national security interest that has to come into public purview? How do we mark, label, some of the infrastructures that we have as no-go areas? Clearly, labeled in which the public knows about it, and for the sake of the national interest, decides that this particular type of infrastructure must not be placed within the public domain. Because of this lacuna, officials who come into the public space as working for national security can then classify everything, either their actions, buildings, utterances as of national security interest, and therefore something that should not come into the public purview. This is the conversation that we need to have. There is not, to my knowledge, any specific law since 1951 that criminalizes access to particular or taking, photographs of particular infrastructure. However, particular types of documents, if we take, for example, all discussions around small arms and all laws around small arms in Ghana are actually supposed to be state secrets. That should not be shared nor actually discussed within the public domain.
That's right.
Okay. So quite a lot of these laws might be in existence as subsidiary laws somewhere, but we haven't brought them together in a single body of legislation that allows all of us to have access to.
Okay, so Proseni, if you can deal with this quickly for me. And from my research, I dare say we don't have what we purport to do. And because, as you may have heard me say, because the Constitution is where we all start from. The Constitution in Article 1911 says, nothing is a crime unless it has been defined in law and the penalty has been prescribed in a written law, not on a wall, not on a house. Now, clearly, some people have tried to show us the State Secrets Act, which doesn't apply at all. It doesn't come any close. So my question is, I'm thinking in my mind, you teach security. If I take the Defense Ministry and the Burma camp, are they both security zones? The Defense Ministry, which is the policy, center, and the Burma camp, which is the operational center, are they both security zones?
Let me come to Burma camp. It ought to, but it's no more. Because if you take the accounting base for how many professional stroke technical people should be living at that camp, probably there are more than 20 times the number of people who ought to be living there, who have no business being there. So I think the security classification of Burma camp probably can be reduced to the very lowest. However, anyone in uniform or supposedly from national security can intimidate you within Burma camp if he or she thinks that you are doing, something that he or she does not like. And something that is why we need to go back to the broader question. What are the mechanisms and the processes that leads to the designation of a place, an issue, a topic as a national security?
Proceeding, this small clarity, if you can do that in 30 seconds for me.
Yeah.
The so-called political policy office of the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah.
Is that a security zone, or is the operation center, the Burma camp, which should be a security zone, or both?
Both. But Burma camp is no more a real security zone because it has been infiltrated by civilians, hawkers, traders, shops, people who don't have no business being in Burma camp.
All right. Thank you. Now, let me start with Kweku. Now, the question of breaching of some law or ethics in capturing the video at the place where he did. What do you say about it?
See, I'll refer to two documents before I proceed. This one is Print Media Guidelines, National Media Commission. I was a member of the committee that worked on this. This is somewhere 2003. I stand to be corrected if it's been reviewed. I don't know about that, and I'll be surprised that it's been reviewed and I don't know about that. When you go to section 4, it says news gathering. As a general rule, journalists must not use or publish materials obtained by subterfuge, using clandestine devices such as hidden cameras and hidden tape recorders. Such activity may, however, be justifiable in special circumstances, such as detecting and inspecting crime sites, or protecting public health and safety. As far as I know, this is still standing.
Yep.
Then you come to the Gje Code of Ethics. This is 2017. This was 2003. This is 2017. And I believe this is still operational. Section 13. It says obtains information, videos, data, photographs, and illustrations only by honest, straightforward, fair, and open means, unless otherwise tampered by public interest considerations. And don't forget, I am more or less an advocate for Tiger Eye. And I trained as the topmost investigative reporter on the Crusading Guide. Of course, now he's a shareholder. We are almost on the equal terms. And he's a great investigative journalist across the world, so recognized. His methodologies are known, open. I'll be totally dishonest if I sat here and tried in any way to take away the value of these two principles I've read, which fortunately come from the GJA and the National Media Commission. So in terms of adopting subterfuge to get information, especially if it's relative to public interest, public health, public order, crime, I'll be the last person to say, hey, why do it? I know there's a school of thought against that in this country as well as abroad. Indeed, that debate we've had on Newsfile many times, especially when the judges matter came up. And I made a point that that argument or debate is as old as investigative journalism. If you go back to the 1880s, that debate is still there. I don't know when it will end, but I vote for these two provisions.
The two provisions you have just read, I have been to court and the courts have endorsed them.
I hear you. I remember. You are right. I shouldn't even have forgotten that.
Have endorsed them.
And indeed, the conduct of the judiciary relative to the NAS judicial corruption thing itself reinforced it.
So a judge asked me a question. How do you expect the journalists to use straightforward means to uncover corruption? Are you kidding me?
Yes, and it's been my philosophy.
Because corruption happens in darkness, it's not in the open.
Yes, it's been my philosophy all my life. So if on that point, I have no difficulty, no challenge. Now, the question to ask is that in this instance, what was the objective or the object of inquiry by the journalist in this case? You have to do that interrogation as well. I realized when I listened to him and others, it's supposed to be the Maslok vehicles that had been more or less at one stage, which words should I use, abandoned or rooted in national security premises for years. It became an issue. I'm actually told, I think I missed those programs. I'm told on both Joy FM and City FM, it became issues for interrogation and debate. Now, what is the present state? I wouldn't want to go into the point about a post he made. I think you recollected it and all that, and there was a banter between him and a former deputy CEO of Maslok. My own checks, and this is in the last 24, 48 hours, is that there were 350 vehicles in all. That was the subject of controversy and arguments and all that. And apparently this gentleman said his motivation was to double check if what the CEO, deputy CEO had said was true or not. And so he decided, and it was part of the Fix the Country campaign in order to show that these are things we should fix in order to move forward. Well, as far as my records show, 12 of those vehicles are still parked at the National Security Council Secretariat. And they are still there because apparently they are unusable and non-functional because of engine defect.
Please, let's show our audience again the picture of when they were sitting there in full. And now the former Maslok boss tells us, Dr. Stephen Amua, that 90% of the vehicles have been taken away. Okay, so this was the first state, and which Caleb captured and showed in support of Fix the Country campaign. And then the deputy Maslok boss, Efia Koto, we understand, told him that this situation doesn't exist anymore. So he pulled this down and then rendered an apology, but decided that he will not end there. He will go to the place to confirm for himself if the vehicles are there or they are not.
Yes, and as I'm saying, at least I have a memo here dated 5th November 2020. I've got some other documents here. This is from the Vehicle High Purchase Unit of Maslok to the CEO and others, dated 5th November 2020. Summary report on the high purchase allocation of 350 vehicles. As I said, there's only 12 left there. And there's enough record to show that the supplier and Maslok came to an agreement that those 12 are non-functional because of engine defect. So they are still there, that's a fact. There are also other vehicles there, the V8, reference to V8. Yeah. Those are NAM1 vehicles that Yoko got a court order to preserve. And I'm told that now the Yoko has been asked by the Attorney General's Department to proceed to get a court order to dispose of them. So the 350, my records show, Chevrolet Sparklight. You know, I don't understand vehicles. I'm very bankrupt there. There were 100. 99 sold. One engine defect is one of the 12 there. The Chevrolet Aveo is 150. 24 was taken by Maslok as part of their fleet of vehicles. Then one was given out to the National Teachers Award, the second runner-up.
Best Teacher Award.
Yes. And 11 of them defect engine. Then there's a Isuzu buses. Is that how to pronounce it? Isuzu or Isuzu buses. There were 100. One was taken by Maslock. 98 was sold. 83 of it to GPRTU. No defect. Total, it means 350 came in, 25 went to Maslock, 311 were sold, and 12 defect. One of the donations went to the National Union of Ghana Students. I forgot to mention that. As we speak, there is even some running battle between members of the GPRTU who were located and Maslock in terms of non-payment.
All right.
So you see, my view, and this is where I'm cautious because I hardly do peer review of fellow journalists, in the sense that there's an element of
now,
double standards.
as you indicate, some remain there.
12.
And then
Dr.
Stephen Amoah was also candid and said 90% have been evacuated. But the response to Caleb that led to him taking down this particular picture was that all the vehicles have been cleared.
Well, I didn't read the deputy chief executive.
That's okay. Yeah.
But assuming she said so,
right,
then she was wrong to the extent that she should have clarified that, look here, there are 12 left, the 12 are defective.
Okay.
And right now, indeed, even before the sale to GPRTU, and there are a lot of outstanding payments, they haven't paid, they haven't done this and all that. It took presidential intervention to reduce the prices, because there was a contention over quality of the vehicles, whether that was the standard that the GPRTU had asked for, and the prices. Because of the back and forth, they had to invite the president himself to use executive approval to allow them to actually buy the thing at a lower price, more than 50% reduction.
And again, this memo you use speaks of these cars having been distributed or sold as at when?
I'm told 2019, late 2019.
Okay, but that's not on the document.
No.
Okay.
Yes, that's no. But you see, there are things.
I just wanted to confirm, because the document we have says the response that came to Caleb was that, and then Stephen Amoah also said they had been sold at 2019.
Yes.
And we know Caleb's concern is that at the back of his mind, he remembers how we left the gallopers for 17 years to go to waste.
Of course.
And state money, people's money was used to purchase them. About 2.6 million US. Eventually, when they got rotten, we sold them for a paltry 300 and something thousand Ghana cedis.
The meeting, one of the minutes between GPRTU and Maslock is dated 11th December 2019.
All right.
They were there to look the way forward to take the release the 83 buses.
Okay.
So the point I'm making is that also checks, and of course the deputy chief executive could have helped by indicating that, look, we have 12 left, the 12 are defective and unusable. I'm told there is an action to see how it can be sold out as scrap. So that's the situation.
Okay. And once again, these cars have been sitting there since when?
They should be they came in 2017 or 2016. They started 2016.
2016.
But they came in 2017.
Okay, so the politicians who have been responsible for this, the politicians who are appointed to these offices, or the political actors who are appointed to these offices, how can they justify to Ghanaians that you take our money to buy the cars in 2016, and it takes us up to 2019,
but I don't think
and it takes a presidential order to deal with them? And where they were sitting, competing with weeds and subject to all the vagaries of the weather. If it were your company you were running, will you take your money, company money, buy these cars and leave them there for how many years before somebody compels you to
yes, but you see, which cars did we buy?
All right.
Were they specific, in line with the specification? All those two are important. Because see, you are buying. No, wait. Let me see. The vehicles were bought originally, buses.
I'm not debating
for GPRTU.
I'm not debating.
So they are using it for commercial business.
I'm not debating you. Whatever it is, my question is, who will do this to their own private company?
But I think, Samson,
yes. Before you come in, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Waylead Properties, home is where you start from. Heaven mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, we truly are the Ruth experts. Robert & Sons Limited Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. We will take a quick break and return to finish up this discussion. And then in the next hour, we will go to look at Galamsey. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Soon we will be changing gear to go into the discussion yet about another situation where Occupy Ghana and several other persons in this country are asking whether we have become a failed state, that the state has such awesome powers and yet it's unable to use the laws it passes itself to regulate the processes of seizing Galamsey equipment, and decides that it will rather use what Kanashigbe describes as using illegality to fight illegality. We will get to that. But first, we are looking at the conduct of the national security in the city situation, and looking eventually, before we close on that chapter, as to what should be done so that this may be the very last, it ought to be the very last that we hear of the national security conducting itself in such a lawless manner. Okay, so you were about to make that point.
Well, the point I was going to make, the question you asked Kweku was, the whole issue about national public interest, and Kweku makes the fact that public, and I think in this specific case, if you have a situation, Kweku has just told us that 12 vehicles are still sitting there, which is 3.43%. Yeah. That's against the 90% that we've told have been sold. Then our 35 vehicles should still be sitting there. So definitely for a journalist, you would want to really confirm this. If somebody tells you that all the vehicles have been sold, and you still also hear that there are some of them. And if you want to confirm them, and the person who told you was not candid enough to say there were some already left, that was not the person you're going to go to. So definitely, I think in terms of the ethical considerations, there definitely was a public interest for Caleb to have done that. For me, this brings about major things that we need to learn from this. The first thing is that as journalists, we need to do this for the country. We need to make sure we follow this case till there is a resolution of this problem. The fact that journalist people are just beating, manhandled by national security has to stop. There should be ways in which we do our things that is akin to a democracy. And that does not seem to have happened. Since we left the revolutionary era, everybody has gone through it. And I think it's in the interest of politicians, first and foremost, to know that it's in their interest for this thing to be fixed. Those of them that are there now, even national security ministers, Azugus and Ks, the situation might change. And they might be the people like Iti Mensah who'll be sitting there and say that place was stinking. So we need to really fix it. We need to also ensure that the beating of journalists stop. And journalists need to find a way of coming together to ensure that we put systems in place. You and I have been discussing some of the things to do. If we don't get resolution out of this, and I do not also buy the argument of the national security being able to investigate itself. I'm currently dealing with one in which the Erastus issue Yesterday, we were at the military high command, and they've told us that they've done some investigation. And I told the Major General we met clearly that I left that meeting more confused than I came in. And that answers that we cannot expect people to be investigating themselves, and nothing would come out of it. So I would definitely, we need to be pushing for an independent inquiry.
So Erastus issue you refer to is Erastus Asaridonko of the Multimedia Group, who brought us the expose about some military men who were still neck deep in the Galamsey activity in the Ashanti region. And you know what happened? His recorders were tampered with and formatted and so on. And the military promised an investigation. They promised an investigation. So look back, how long has it been? What investigation has happened?
Some investigation, they said, have happened. And, you know, including military, police and all of that. And one of the things they established was that these were military people that were sent there at the request of the district assembly, you know. But there are other questions that we want to answer with that. But that clearly, and you would ask yourself, that investigation that happened, Erastus was not called, you know. So if we do this national security one and it's also just done at their end, really we will not solve it. So I think it's in the interest of Ghana, in the interest of all of us, that this investigation is an independent investigation. And I think organizations such as the Parliament themselves should look into this. SRAG should also look into it. But it is important that national security elect an independent body completely to really look into this. And then for us as journalists, there are a lot of learnings that we need
in the Emmanuel Ajafo case, the modern Ghana journalist, of course, one took a civil suit, and we are still in court. I'm his lawyer. Now, the ministry issued a statement. If you take that statement and compare it to what they have issued, the
template,
it's almost the same
template. And
they said we are going to investigate. Not a thing has been done.
So I think it would be good for journalists to go back and just look at when all of these things that are said, when they happen and investigations are said. And you see, we should be people who should be guided by outputs of these things. And you will find out that 99.9%, nothing comes out of that. It is a way just to tell you that keep quiet. Because when you go again, they'll tell you that they are investigating it. One of the things we should be seeking to do is to start elevating this conversation from just the civil suit and going to the West African court. We have seen it happen in the situation in Gambia, where the Gambia government were taken to the West African court and they were fined. I think it was $10,000, $100,000. We need to start elevating it. So if you have a situation where Latif is assaulted by a state institution, if you have the situation Pius currently was shot by a national security operative, if you have situations where the modern Ghana people, we need to start saying that if it will not be dealt with nationally, let's go internationally. And then it would force our national national body to start dealing with this situation. We need to also start teaching journalists a lot more about how to fight, come together, and two, how to also handle yourself. Definitely there are a lot of lessons that Caleb should have taught us about the way not to do some of these investigative pieces. But critically, one of the challenges that we are facing as a media is that now you are finding out that our reportage is now basically assignment ridden. Our reportage is now just your PR stories, but the critical stories that have to be told, and that's the posture of journalists. The Constitution tells us that we're supposed to hold leadership to account. And for me, I define leadership very broadly. It's not just political leadership. It's all kind of leadership. And that will not happen. There's a media house that I know that has set up an investigative body. But currently, as we speak, all of those investigative, and they recruited even investigative journalists. Those investigative people, they're not writing anything like that because, and sometimes it's self-censorship by those of the people who are editors. And so the Kubakus and the like, you need to ensure that you don't become extinct, that now nobody is replacing you, and that should be a cause of worry for all of us. And that will not happen if we continue to see activities like this where those who attempt to do investigative journalism are beating the way they are done. Because the freedom of the media, the freedom of the press, it's not something just for the media. It's for all of us. Because in this country, when things happen to people like Azugus and things when they leave power, they are not going to call any lawyer or anything. The first people they'll place a call to is the media house. We all need to ensure that we can guarantee that space so that it will all inure to our democracy and the help of all of us.
So we go to Professor Rodriguez-Poe. She spoke about journalistic ethics and the methods that we use, as well as the questions of safety. And then I'll ask Kweku and ask Audrey, what should be the way forward? What should we do about this? Or beyond this, what should be done? Professor Enin used the confidential. He explained it, and I have been checking. So these are the categories. Restricted, that is highly sensitive information. Confidential, which is sensitive information. Then they have what they call internal, which is non-sensitive information that is not released to the public. And then they have public, which is information that has been approved for public access. Professor Audrey Gje, what do you want to say about the journalistic ethics question and the methods and the questions of safety, particularly for media owners?
Okay. First of all, I just have to react to what you just read. You see that there's a category that says public. For public access. That was the last category you read.
All right.
So that press release should have had public on it because it was a public press release.
Okay.
And okay. I also think that one important point that we must make in this discussion is the fact that the actions of the national security as we see it are deliberate not against one journalist, but against the entire profession. It's meant to intimidate. It's meant to have a chilling effect on journalism so that journalists cannot do what they ought to be doing, which is be investigative, especially of certain institutions that think that they are above the law, like national security. I think that when it comes to journalistic ethics, Kweku Baku said it, and Ken Ashigbe has also said it, is that the rules of journalism allow for undercover journalism. We would not have transformations in our societies if journalists are not able to go undercover to do stories. And even though there are ethical canons, and they're supposed to respect those ethical canons, there are always caveats. So that, you go through a certain exercise in your mind or in the newsroom, if it's a teamwork, to say, is this in the national interest? Is it in the public interest? If it is, how so? And therefore, how do we then approach this story to get at the truth? Journalism is about truth. It's about verification. It's not about taking official statements on the surface and deciding that it is true or not. We expect our journalists, and often my frustration is that we're so used to routinized stories, event-driven. So you wait till you're invited to an event, or you routinely cover, you ask for reaction, they give you a statement, you publish it. But what we should expect from journalism, good journalism, is that the journalist will go beyond that to independently verify whether the claims that are being made are true or not. And that's why I think, therefore, that there was merit in what Caleb did. Right. It is true that he was told that the cars have been disposed of. He does not need to take it on face value. He needs to make sure that he verifies whether that statement is true or not. So that verification is important. Now, the way in which he did it may be of concern, but is there some other way? As you, Samson, yourself said, the judge asked you, those who are involved in corruption thrive in the darkness. They are not about to give you easy access to come and expose wrongdoing. That's why I come back to safety of journalists and the obligations of the newsrooms to show journalists how to properly do investigative pieces without putting themselves in harm's way. And in this case, for example, I asked myself, couldn't it have been possible to use some long lenses from a neighboring house, because this was in the compound, it wasn't inside the building itself, to take those pictures? So I think that the profession must explore ways in which, today with all kinds of technology, you can surreptitiously obtain information that is in the public interest without endangering yourselves. I mean, you can have concealed cameras, for example, that are used in investigative journalism, you know. But so train your journalists properly so that they are not caught. I mean, Caleb was talking about, I mean, it looks like when he was taking the pictures, it was quite easy to see that he was taking pictures of the place, you know. So they need training, and I think that I cannot say it enough. The media houses have an obligation to train their journalists, because we need entrepreneurial journalism, enterprise journalism, not journalism from officialdom saying they are doing A, B, C, D, because we cannot transform our country if that's what we reduce the role of the media to.
You said at the outset that there is obvious crisis of impunity that the minister and government must address. He should be held accountable. How?
How? Well, we can start by saying that Parliament ought to invite the minister to speak to this issue. So that's a level of accountability. But two, I like what Ken says, the journalistic fraternity led by the GJA should come together and have a strategy of making sure that this story is not killed, not because it's an individual story, but it is an exemplar of a larger problem. And again, you've cited a lot of instances where journalists have been abused. So it should not die. It should go to civil court. I think that I mean, you are a lawyer. I hope that we can sue the Ministry of National Security and all the individuals that were implicated individually and severally. They ought to be sued, because we also need the courts in this suit to clarify for us what these operatives can and cannot do. So we need that clarification so that they know themselves. But we also really need to ask the Minister for National Security to transform. You see, what pains me is that under the NPP government of President Kufuor, criminal libel was repealed. And it sent a strong signal that the actions of journalists, whether it is justified or unjustified, because of course, in the course of news gathering and production, errors can occur. And that's why journalistic rights have to be protected. We're not saying that journalists do not err, they do err. But when they err, what should happen to them? And it is clear from the repeal of the criminal law, it's clear from our constitution that when journalists err, they should not be treated like criminals. They should not be criminalized. We should never have a journalist handcuffed because of what they did in the course of doing their work. There are procedures for that. Take them to court.
Okay. All right. Thank you so very much, Audrey, for making the time to join us this morning to share these very deep thoughts with us. Now, let me come to you, Keku, and we are now concluding on what should happen. Occupy Ghana issued a statement saying the ministry cannot investigate itself. Of course, the basic principle of law is what we call the rules of natural justice. You cannot be a judge in your own cause, so they cannot investigate themselves. So there should be a proper probe. And Occupy Ghana has taken pains to outline what is wrong. The One Ghana movement also have a statement in a similar light, but asking for the investigations to be expanded so that people who may have had any encounters with national security, including the BNI, now NIB, can go to an eminent committee and tell their stories for the purposes of resolving the issue. In their statement, they say that the president should from the outset make a commitment that when such a commission finishes its work, he will not vary the recommendations, and within 3 months, he will implement it. There's been a number of statements that have been issued. CDD Ghana also issues a statement and speak in similar fashion. And almost all of them also refer to the Ayawaso Was Wegon report, which appears but for this situation, we would not have known that even aspects that the president accepted with a white paper that should be implemented have not been implemented. Otherwise, Azugu will not be at that place still. So how do we proceed? This is not happening now, true. It's happening over and again. And I remember I've been speaking about Baba Kamara, National Security Advisor, in 2016. Somebody took a picture of vehicles, an MD, and he got arrested. I sat here, Nana Kumia sat here, the MPP gave a statement, very nice statement, condemning it. As we speak, I've not heard from the NPP that things have changed. It looks like their principles are affected by the seasons. Nobody is saying anything. The president himself, people ought to have heard him say something. He's not said anything, he's quiet.
Well, see, let me clarify something before I proceed to deal with the issues. My contention relative to the timing of the disclosure, as far as I'm concerned, was a legitimate line of inquiry, which I did with a highly placed person at City before coming public.
All right.
I made a point that it raises legitimate concerns. For me as a newsman, there is no way my reporter will be picked. No lawyer present, management not present, and when he comes back, I ask him to go home without asking what happened to you. There's no way. And I'm saying that that omission, whether inadvertent or whatever you want to call it, has an impact. It allows people to raise elements of doubt. It is not to suggest that there was no brutality, because I'm not in the position to affirm that. And we all made a point. That's why I was happy that you said there are eyewitnesses. So I proceed to the point where people are calling for investigations. 100%, I endorse it. I've heard people say Shraj. Shraj is an independent body. It could do it. They've done some before. Shraj has done a lot of investigations. Sometimes they don't publicize quite a lot of the work they do, but then they could do it. Somebody's, is it the One Movement Ghana? They were asking for the government to set up an independent.
Yes.
You see, you wait. Let the state or the president set up an independent body. There will be another line of argument as to who is getting onto that body and how and what will be used, the report will be used for. I would prefer Shraj. I'll be honest with you. I prefer Shraj to deal with this matter, where they will have the benefit of the eyewitness accounts and all those things, so that we move away from people doubting the credibility of a committee or a commission that the president may set up. That is important. Parliament's Committee on Defense and things, if they would it be devoid of parliamentary partisanship. If it would, because already there are people who are seeking to politicize this matter, and it's not helpful. It doesn't make people focused. They too can come in. See, the national security has every right, the ministry has every right to conduct its own investigations, which it can present to whatever, because they'll be caught. Okay? National security.
If it does it to present to the president.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about if they are called, they are invited by Shraj.
Ah, okay.
They certainly must go with the position. And that position cannot come from the air. It's a position based on investigations you've done. Whether it is credible or not is not what I'm talking about. But you would appear before whatever committee of inquiry or Shraj, and you must come with a consolidated position on the matter. So they can proceed, except that we are not saying that should be a substitute for an independent inquiry. No. What else do you want me to add?
Yes. So that's it. We are just concluding on how,
and you see, it's because
how we should ensure this does not repeat itself.
Yes, and something.
Right.
There are some people who are allergic to historical recollection. Let me tell you, it's a cowardly conduct and an attempt for us to be selective in a real account of history. We sat here, you gave us examples.
Yeah.
My brother came in and made a point. This is nothing new. We are talking of culture of impunity. We cannot be selective if we are dealing with it. In fact, even the committee that will deal with Caleb Stein may be required to look at how previous things were done and not checked. We've read West Africa Foundation. One critical point there is the point that this impunity goes unpunished.
Right.
And it's because those offenses have gone unpunished.
In my case, Adokufo then, who was defense minister, was asked directly by Matilda Asante on the midday news. And he said they were moving in to take action and that those officers were known. They'll be dealt with. Nothing
What happened?
Nothing. But sometimes I think one of the fundamental things we should also be looking at is the NMC. The NMC's posture of saying that when things happen, people should come to them has to stop and has to end. You see, so I don't...
City has actually lodged a complaint.
Yeah, but they don't have to even wait. And that's, I have spoken to some of them and they tell you they're waiting. They should take judicial notice of some of these things that happen.
No, but they are supposed to be an umpire.
You see,
impartial, so to speak.
Yes, in as much as they are supposed to be an umpire and impartial as we speak, they are also to protect the media freedoms. So when you see
and monitor,
and monitor as well. So when you see that a group of people attack a media house, you don't then sit and say you're waiting for anybody else. And I think they are also part of the problems. And then definitely the leadership of the media and the GJA, we really need to sit up and say that enough of this should stop. It should stop happening. And it can only happen when leadership actually shows that this is what we are going to do, including people who are running radio stations, running TV stations, running newspaper houses. We need to be committed to this.
And
all right.
Apparently, the gentleman didn't have defense, any lawyer by him.
We haven't been told about that. Okay, so that's part of the training that media houses should get.
Yeah. But the media house must have it.
If you were working with a graphic
attachment
and something happened to you, your HR will assign a lawyer to you immediately.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you're working with multimedia, your HR will assign a lawyer to you immediately. And even where you are taking, you see, Caleb says,
yes, exactly.
Caleb says somebody was dictating to him what to write, the statement. And we have too many citizens who go to security places and they are dictated what to write. But the person who is going to prosecute you is telling you what to write.
City is of high grade, so I'm sure they also have legal.
Right, they do.
Yes,
they do. Okay, and Human Rights and Governance Center. The Human Rights and Governance Center also issues a statement and decried, deplores what is going on, and also asking for investigations. That should not be done by the national security. They mentioned the Emmanuel Ajafo situation where nothing happens, and it says once bitten, twice shy, and also are asking for a disbandment of the SWAT unit of the National Security Ministry, and for the Emil Short Commission report to be implemented. Now,
did they give us an alternative mechanism for the inquiry? Which one do they prefer?
They are asking for an independent inquiry. It shouldn't be the National Security
But that will come from government.
Okay,
President,
but we can set up an independent body.
Yes, I'm not against that, but I'm saying I hope cynicism will not meet the constitution of that so-called independent body.
Right. So that's where I think the One Ghana movement statement is very good, where they say from the outset, the president should commit that if you set up the eminent panel, the results they bring, you will not vary it.
But it's not based.
And you will implement it within 3 months or so.
It is not backed by law. The president can. What's the basis for a president to make that pledge? Proud to. It's not law.
Okay. All right. So on this note, I'd like to say a few things. For those of you who say I'm moderating with interest, let me tell you, I'm moderating with vested interest. I'm so interested in this.
No problem.
And I want to say this. For those of you asking, how about when you go to the court? They say if you take pictures, you'll be in trouble. Let not anybody lie to you. You can take pictures around the court. It is in the courts when the business is happening that you cannot do. And there's a law that says if you do that, you could be in contempt. Those who say, okay, why don't you go to Pentagon and take a picture? Well, I have pointed to you in the US Criminal Code, there is a provision that says that the president has the power to provide and designate places as such. So all those don't come in. And here in Ghana, is there any such? There is not. read the national security statement. They don't say the guy has committed any offense. Do you know what offense they say he's likely to have committed? That he deceived somebody and had his way in there. But their own officers were deceiving, what's the name? Zoe Abubedu in the process. And number two, more important to me, even if a person has committed wrong and you arrest them, you don't beat them. The law doesn't give you power to molest them. And finally, you don't access the content of their gadgets unless with a warrant from the courts. Thank you very much. We take a quick break and return to look at Galamsey. And the show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts from. Having mosquito spray and coil, pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, we truly are your roof experts. Robert & Sons Limited, optical services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. We'll be right back.
Honorable Minister, there's been a big debate in the country about, I don't call burning of excavators. I don't use that word. I call it decommissioning or demobilizing of equipment which are used for illegal mining.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. Now I'll share with you some of the messages that you have been sending with us as we had the discussion. And this from Degura Batinos says every citizen, regardless of his or her status, fundamental human rights and freedoms must be respected at any point in time, because our constitution does not support brutalities and instant justice. Can these security officers be held liable for violating human rights? Collins Little Tete says the Caleb story confirms racism is not in the African dictionary, but tribalism. Yes, there's something that he also mentioned, and I'm sure we can play all the ostrich about it, but we know that this is serious. That he said he was asked, "What's where is he coming from?" And you know, there was reason for him to suspect that if he had answered that he was coming from somewhere else in this country, he would have suffered even the more. Elwe Nam Perez says the assault and intimidation are becoming too much. No wonder most fine journalists are now reading higher education in public affairs and public relations. Man Friday says that you can walk in and see deteriorating cars, but can't let others see it. This young journalist's suffering is very sad and shouldn't be condoned. This is really, really sad. Mozilla says, I love to be here on Saturdays since primary 6. Join us on Newsfile. Prince Henry in Koforidua says, what prevented the national security personnel from talking to the management of City over the issue of Caleb and Zoe, rather than invading the premises as if the staff there were armed robbers? You hear what Caleb said? He said, if I had done one of the judgment debts and they were beating me that way, I understand. Parko, Mayor Eshen says, hey, journalism must be a very difficult and dangerous job. Sometimes it is, it shouldn't. Nyavo John says, until we stop rewarding party foot soldiers with recruitment into such sensitive institutions like the national security, these things will continue. See I know of someone who was a dropout way back during primary school. Today, his party comes to power and he is an operative at National Security. You don't know if he had improved himself over the period and is qualified. But yes, that's why Dr. Prosakwesieni says he would prefer to call it regime security rather than national security. This one from Gasma says, I disagree with Professor Gje assertion that our men, security, don't appreciate the work of journalists. The people who don't understand the people who don't understand are the ones the politicians have infiltrated our security. Article 202(2) of the Constitution must go. IGP subject to the control of direction of politician. Not good. Bevu MK Mens says, go to our police station and see the inhumane treatment. It's Caleb today. It has it's Caleb today and has the voice. What happens to those of us without the voice? Number one, no one takes the police on, so they keep getting away with it every time, and even you do get it somewhere. Sad country. Okay, it is true, we know that sometimes there are a bit of excesses in the police and elsewhere. People have actually been saying, look at Iyoko and the rest. Leadership is important. Iyoko, the new leadership. I have gone to Iyoko many times. They don't do what used to be there. So don't put one brush and say all of them are like that. This particular place, that's what it is. That's where we have to work. This one says, without justice, the most heinous crimes go unpunished. Victims are unable to obtain redress, and peace remains an elusive goal, since impunity generates more hatred, leading to acts of revenge and more suffering. Amalimbe Chris says, I am a proud trained journalist. I always admire Anas and Azuri for their brilliant investigative pieces. But hey, the way and manner journalists are being tortured and killed, my interest in investigative journalism is gradually dwindling by the day. I'll read this final bit. This is what happens when government after government recruits partyful soldiers and vigilante into the national security instead of professionals. Okay, so I've got to stop here. And Malik Dabu says that I once took a picture at the Accra International Conference Center and 2 police officers confronted me that it's a security zone. I fought with them. So where do we know is security zone? That's a question. So we are asking about the Galamsey fight and whether or not Otumfuo's involvement will bring us the needed end to this menace. Let's listen to Otumfuo Oseitu to the second.
I no say na na epacho ya kan de wokrata no so me se ma preso me kan na so and just I know me say bia me kan sem fufuro bia e den kakra so za no kreni me ka kire wo mu say Galamsey ya ye kan nyina dem ha me chemu ye ne ye chemu se me ya yi wo ha ne chemu miensa e mu be 30% ni mo ma ye Galamsey ni nyina so
DCs as chairpersons of district security council should be held directly responsible for situations of illegal mining within their respective districts. They should ensure that, in collaboration with the regulatory authorities, small-scale mining is effectively monitored so it is done in compliance with the required practices and regulatory framework. And then illegal miners also can be stopped. On my part, I have already warned my chiefs and elders against participation in such illegalities and will not hesitate to strongly sanction any such infraction. Already I've had reports about some things happening in Amansia and the Fomna area, and I'll be investigating that to see what's happening.
The need to actively involve traditional authorities in this effort is absolutely imperative, for they continue to be the custodians of our communities across the country.
Sure.
We should go beyond paying lip service to traditional authorities as custodians of our communal land and seriously and actively engage them in this collective crusade. For example, the current system, whereby licenses for concessions are given out before consulting traditional authorities, is dysfunctional and must be revised.
Sure.
It is my considered view that it will be most prudent to consult traditional authorities before licenses for concessions are given out.
Sure.
Does it not make a mockery when the Constitution says the minerals under the president is in charge of the minerals on the earth, but when you're going to mine the mineral, you go through the land that belongs to the chief?
Sure.
So why doesn't he have a right to know who is doing that?
Sure.
Thank you for joining us, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Abu Jinafo.
Thank you for having me, Samson, and very good morning to your cherished listeners.
This must be a shot in the arm for you to have Otumfuo himself speak in the manner he speaks and commit himself to, you know, be a guard.
Absolutely. I mean, Asante Hene's attendance at this consultation was a big impetus to whatever effort we are trying to make, and we are highly appreciative of that move. As you know, the Asante wields a lot of influence and has a lot of moral authority when it comes to Asante in Ghana. So his appearance was a good thing.
So far, so good, you will say?
Listen, I don't know about that. I think that the matter before us, as I also indicated in my speech at the consultation in Kumasi, is a very complex one. It can be likened to the illicit drug trade, and you know, the tentacles of it are many, and the interest groups are entrenched. And in this industry, you're talking about money. You're not just talking about money, you're talking about hard money, a lot of money involved in it. And so the tendency for people of all sorts and institutions of all sorts to compromise is always very high. So what I would say to you is that it cannot be an event. It has to be a process. And what is important is the concertedness and sustainability of whatever efforts we are trying to outlay, and whatever measures we are outlining and also enforcing. We have to be firm, we have to be determined, and it has to be sustainable. I mean, if you keep at it for a month or two, and then you take your eyes off the ball, you're certainly going to have a problem. So what I can say is that I'm not too sure about so far so good. I think that we are moving forward a bit. I'm told as a result of the measures we put in place, some of our River Pra, River Ofing, River Brim, and the rest are beginning to recover. Early days yet.
Yeah, those are the pictures I have seen. That gives me the reason to ask the question I'm asking.
Yeah, you are right. You can ask that question, but I don't want to be ahead of myself. I want that, and I've said it. I want to teach. This is a collective effort, and let me use the occasion to thank my friends from the NDC leadership in Parliament, the Honourable Colin Dowda, the Honourable Yunus Amseni, Honourable Rashid Topo, Honourable Suini, and also the leadership of the MPP in Parliament, the various chairpersons of our committees in Parliament. They've been tremendous. But you'll be surprised, some of the measures they are implementing, some of them have been ideas they have actually proposed. And if we all put our hands on the deck, I believe by all means, if we are not able to eradicate illegal small-scale mining in our country, we can see the instances of it.
So you had a press gathering where you told us you gave us some updates about how far you have gone and where else you are going, sending a warning to people ahead of time that they should expect that your team will be there. Operation Halt Part 2 will be there to deal with them. So take us again onto in terms of what you have been able to rescue. Which areas in the country can you say that so far you have secured and people will not be able to go back there and misconduct themselves? And then give us the numbers of the machines that you are decommissioning.
Well, first of all, the military have largely, the Minister for Defense may be able to give you a lot more details, but the military have largely cleared River Pratt, and hopefully all things being equal on Tuesday, myself and the Information Minister are going to embark on a tour of River Pratt to ascertain for ourselves. But essentially, the reports I received is that River Pratt is declared largely. They are west on River Finn to some extent. I think they are going to move to Surin or so. But the larger mission, the larger objective is that all river bodies and forest reserves in our country are going to be cleared of illegal small-scale mining. Red zone, river bodies, forest reserves, those have been declared. They've been designated as such, and the military have been given express instructions by the President and African Commonwealth to rid our river bodies and forest reserves of illegal small-scale mining. But whilst at this time, let me also make the point that we need the support of everybody. In this struggle, I've been minister for just a month or so, two or so months, and what I've come to realize is that it helps a lot when you get encouragement from the country. Now, there's been this debate about decommissioning of excavators and the rest, and I've posed the question: what will an excavator be doing on the price? Why don't we start the conversation from that point? Why don't Ghanaians, why don't civil society organizations, media, why don't the pundits ask the question, what at all will an excavator or champagne be doing on the Pra or the Finn or the Green?
It obviously will be doing an illegal business of galamsey.
Yes. So that is the case. And this is a very extraordinary situation, and whenever you have extraordinary situations, you need extraordinary tools to deal with it, which is why it's because such an extraordinary, exceptional situation. That's why we're using the police, that's why we're using the Police Commission, that's why we're using the Ghana Armed Forces. And if the Ghana Armed Forces moves in, and these excavators, mostly when you go in, they will remove a part of it, which will mean that you cannot operate it. You have to get a low bed, which costs a lot, which in some cases cannot even reach the place where they are, and then you have to evacuate them, where you get the warehouse at the cost, put them in the warehouse, all know the problem.
You say you are working with the president's marching orders. So it is the president who has sworn on the Constitution to respect the laws of this country, who has asked you to use illegal means to fight an illegality, because what you are doing is contrary to the Minerals and Mining Act. It's contrary to the Minerals and Mining Act instrument LI 2404.
But LI 2404 says, LI 2404 itself stipulates that before you can use an equipment for mining, you must register with the Minerals Commission.
That's
the
right.
place where you are going to use the equipment for mining must be designated and registered with the Minerals Commission. That's a breach of the law.
That's right. So those that you have found, they have not registered with the Minerals Commission?
Certainly, they cannot be, because the Minerals Commission cannot register an equipment to be used on a river.
So the people in the Minerals Commission, what are they doing? What is happening to them? Is that not their job?
Well, we are looking at all of that. As you know, a lot of reforms are happening there as well.
Well, if they are failing and you find machines where they ought not be, what's the process of law? You are a lawyer. Tell me. If you arrest a thief, do you decapitate them?
You don't decapitate the thief at all.
Yeah, but what do you do?
You don't decapitate the thief, but the law enforcer has a lot of discretion to deal with situations as he finds them. If the law enforcer moves to a place to find cocaine and he cannot evacuate the cocaine, should he leave the cocaine there for the president turn around and come and have use of the cocaine? No. There's law enforcer in the heat of affairs. will not have to be theoretical. It has to be practical.
The law enforcer who has all the power of the state cannot gather the evidence to prosecute and ensure that the law is followed. The law enforcer must use the law. Is that not the case?
You don't need an excavator to prosecute as evidence. The evidence they require to prosecute, they collect them. But I'm saying to you, Samson,
but why did you make the law? What is the law for? The law that regulates how the excavator should be managed. And when you find one, the law says, be patient. Put the people through prosecution. The court, after he convicts them, will make an order for forfeiture of the excavators or other products. And then it says you will distribute them to state entities that need them. Why are you not following the law? Is that not simple enough?
Well, it will mean certainly something. With the greatest of respect to you and your interpretation of the law, it will mean that the 5,000 champagnes on the rivers of our country, we have to collect all of them and put them together. That's what it will mean. If we are going to, in all respect, if we are going to interpret the law in this narrow manner, it will mean that we have to gather about.
Is that the law, or is a narrow interpretation? I am not interpreting the law. Do you want me to just read it? It says, do what I am just talking about. You are not doing that. You are saying this is extraordinary. Extraordinary means you must put the law aside. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's what I'm saying.
But you are not following the law.
No, not that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you take the totality of the circumstances and you have regard to all the laws, LI 2404, Act 703, Act 995, all of it together, the Constitution, and so on and so, the public good and all of that. I will find the conduct of the military justifiable under law. I find it justifiable under fairness. I find it reasonable. Somebody can test the law. But I'm saying, if we are going to go by this interpretation of the law as enunciated, it will mean that about the 10,000 or more champagnes on our river.
And I said, I'm not interpreting the law. I'm just reading the law to you. I'm not interpreting it.
Well, but that's the.
You agree that you are not following the law, correct?
No, I don't. I vehemently disagree with you on that.
You are breaking the law.
No, we are not.
The law says seize them.
We are not. We are not breaking
the law. The law says seize them.
The law on the contrary.
Let a court make an order of forfeiture. Those that you are set alight. By what order are you setting them alight? The president's order?
I am saying to you that the law empowers the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources to ensure that our country is rid of illegal small-scale mining. That's the same law. Your office
is created by law, so you respect the law.
This is a very topical matter. If you can have one at a time, so that I just make my position quite clear, because this is a very
you have made your position clear. I'm just following up, and I just needed us to clear that. The law is black and white and doesn't need further interpretation. And in fact, you amended it 2015, and subsequently in 2019 or 2019, you amended it again. You didn't put anywhere that you seize excavators and burn them.
No, that's what I'm saying. I am saying, my point is simple, and if you allow me for a minute, I'll make the point. My point is that our overarching mandate, rooted in law, first one to Act 703, is to ensure that we rid our country of illegal small-scale mining. That's a legal mandate. There's no question about that. That is sanctioned by law.
Which law?
But Act 703 requires that only lawful small-scale mining should happen in our country. So on the contrary, then what? Are you saying that it's lawful to have small-scale mining not licensed? Are you saying that it's lawful to use an excavator which is not licensed by the Regional Commission pursuant to LI 2004? No, they're not suggesting so.
You need a law to set up a business in Ghana. If we find that you're operating a business office and you don't have a registration and you haven't gone through, we should come and demolish the building?
No, you shouldn't. But that's a simple.
Can you point me to which part of the law that says that you can take excavators and burn them?
You should never do that. You shouldn't go and burn down you shouldn't go and burn down a shop which is not registered. But the point I'm making is that when it comes to mining, you have to take the totality of the circumstances before you can come to the conclusion that a conduct is justifiable.
Thank you. Let me get my other panelists into the discussion. Yes, Ken, let's hear from you.
Well, you I can appreciate the challenge of the minister, but I think we need to establish the point that currently, as we speak, the laws we have do not allow us to do the demolition, the decommissioning and demobilization, as he's saying it. But that challenge, let me give you a typical example. You go in the middle of you go during the day, and you go and see an excavator sitting on the prow. The people have decommissioned it. It will take a civil works to even be able to get a low loader to the excavator to say you are going to move it away from there. So how do you leave it there for them to come back at night again to fix it? But Mr. Minister, humbly, I don't think the solution is not getting the law. I think the thing we should do, quickly get this law amended. We are definitely in a crisis. Let's get the law amended so that we are seen to be using legal means to be able to deal with the illegality. But I completely hear the challenges that we're facing. But the solution of it is not the way we're doing.
He's challenging you. You have said that they are using illegalities to fight illegalities. He's challenging. He says that what they are doing, they are mandated. He can't point us to any law.
I am not a lawyer, but reading the law as I see it, I don't see that. That is the power that has been granted to those who are enforcing the law to be able to do it. But I think there is a need, and the laws are made by us. And I think that the thing to do immediately is to be able to go and get the law amended so that this can be done. I think one of the failings we did in the past was pulling the military away from the fight, because the river bodies continuously are continuing to be destroyed. But I think it is also very critical, and I've heard the military also mention the fact that, and there's a video even that you can see where they talk about somebody is 2 kilometers away, and we are narrowly defining the boundaries with just the 100 meters away. Once your operations are impacting upon the water body, it's an illegality. So I think that with all the learnings that we have done, we need to quickly be looking into ways as quickly as possible that we can do this. And the sustainability of this one of them would have been that it is based on law.
So tell me, what is the one thing that we didn't do and failed in the big campaign that started? You are the coordinator of that campaign. So what is that one thing that we need to pay attention to?
It was the partisan involvement in the Galamsey. That was at the base of it. The fact that politicians were involved in it. So one of Tumfo says that 30% of the people in there know the people who are involved. The fact is that the politicians, political people of high political influence who are involved in it. When the president put his political career on the line, everything else was going well enough. Till the point where then, as we were going around, you saw the NDC people start on the local ground, starting to instigate the people against the MPP. And then you started seeing the local MPP people on the ground beginning to start responding to it. You also saw the situation that once the NDC lost office, the MPP local people then moved in to take the concessions that the NDC was controlling. And so the leadership at the top could not deal with them. You have the situation of Operation Vanguard would arrest some of these people, and calls will come to say then let them go. When I met the minister the very first time, even before his birthday, he said something which is very fundamental to this fight. It's leadership from him that has integrity. Leadership that will say that it does not matter what you do. So when the president meets, as Kennedy Japon reports, that he says to the executives, that conversation, the president should do it very openly and tell all of them. And they know them that are involved. Let me give you a typical example. The Upper Danger East Municipal.
They know them.
Yes, they know.
And they are chasing after the machines.
You see, and that tends. Typical example. Let me give you another challenge that made the fight fail. Aisha Wang. We all know the influence Aisha Wang had in this. You had the situation when she was arrested first. It was some various, charges that were brought against her. They had to take Occupy Ghana for them to amend it. That case in court, at least for me as a learned person, was going quite well. Then you get the Attorney General go to court and file nolle prosequi. We file a petition, no explanation was given. Then you think that the journalists who are involved in it. I've spoken to Anas. One of the questions he says to me is, what has happened to the investigation that they did?
Okay, hold on for me. Dr. Gladys Nyako Ansah is co-principal investigator, University of York. UG Galamsey research team. What is the missing link? What are we missing in this whole thing that keeps us coming back to this fight?
All right. Thank you very much. I think what is missing is the involvement of the local people in the areas where Galamsey activities occur. We are fighting, in quote, I put fight in quote, from Accra, from Burma camp, but the battleground is down there in the villages, in the forest. If the local people decide that we will not allow strangers, politicians, whoever, to mess up our forests and our river bodies, the government will not need to send whatever operation, Vanguard, Galam Stop, or whatever. No. I'll give you one example. So we have been working at the Atiwa West District. As a linguist, if you ask me, maybe if you asked people who know Atiwa generally, and you ask them to look for a synonym for Atiwa, I bet you hear words like Galamsey, right? Almost every community in the district where we were is involved in Galamsey. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. We've been to the field. What you see in the videos, they come nowhere near the actual thing if you go to the ground. But in this community, in this district, there is one community. It is called Esunafo. No Galamsey activity whatsoever occurs in this community. We saw there are clean brooks, small rivers, streams there. The people are engaged in agriculture. They don't mine, not because there is no gold or diamond. How has it happened? People have actually gone to Esunafo with permits, concession from Accra. We have permission to mine. And the people say, no, you cannot mine our land. Take the permission, the whatever permit you have, take it back. We don't want you. For me, we should change the language around Galamsey. We are calling it a fight. You see, when you call it a fight, what you create, the impression you create in the minds of the people, who are the enemies involved in this fight? Is it government against local people? Is it government against the people who are mining? Who are the actors involved in this fight? When you call it a war, I'm not a lawyer, but I've listened to you and the minister, honorable minister, banter over legality and illegality. Look, if you declare war, you can't talk about legalities. It is illegal to murder, to kill. But when you declare war, what are you doing? If I'm a soldier and I kill somebody in a war, you cannot prosecute me for killing. You can't call it a murder. So if you call it a war, then you are not going to get the collaboration, which I think is what we need to address. I don't even want to say to fight, to address the problem. It's a real problem. In Esunafo, what is happening is that they have a 12-member committee. They call themselves the Etiatifo. And it is made up of young people, a few youth, a few people from the royal clan, and the assemblyman, and a few other people who are volunteers. And they are the real Operation Vanguard. They don't need the military. It is them, the people. We spoke to them, we had interviews, focus group. What they are saying is that this is our land. The land was passed on to us by our ancestors. We hold it in trust for the unborn. So we have a duty to our ancestors to pass on that which they passed on to us to the next generation. And so we don't want to, and we don't want anybody to destroy our water bodies. If you go to the grounds, Galamsey site, there are very complex situations and issues. There are migrants who come there. They come from wherever, across West Africa, the rest of the country. They come there. They are not major stakeholders in the ecosystem of the Galamsey area, so they can destroy with impunity.
All right. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Gladys Nyarko-Ansah, for making the time to join us and sharing with us the missing link in all of this fight. Abdul Malik Kubako says he's tired. He just tired. He's spoken about this matter just too many times and identified where the problem is, but what is going on? Let's have the minister come in for just some 30 seconds and then we take a break. Hi.
Yeah, Samson, thank you. And I've been enjoying the contributions of all your panelists. And let the discussion go on. I'm very open, and the government and the ministry is open to ideas. I hear the gentleman who makes the point about looking at the law again, and so on and so forth. We'll take a look at all of that. But bottom line is that we have a problem on our hands, and we have to solve it.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to do.
And you have the nation's support to solve this, because if you don't solve it, posterity will not forgive those of you who have been giving leadership to solve this.
It's very clear to me.
All right. Thank you so very much. Samuel Abu Jinapor is Minister, Lands and Natural Resources, and MP Damongo. Dr. Gladys Nyarko-Ansah, Principal Investigator, University of York, UG Galamsey Research Team. Kenneth Asigbe is Convener, Media Coalition Against Galamsey. Abdul Malik Kubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide. You've been asking for him. He's here. So get ready to enjoy him with the documents. Today he came with an extra dose of the pile of the documents. So Koku, thank you so much. Hope to see you next week.
Sure.
Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa. Strong is a group and close is a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Way Lead Properties, home is where one starts from. Having mosquito spray and coil. Pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, we truly are your roof experts. Robert & Sons Limited, Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. On behalf of my production team, have a good afternoon. Thank you.